Christmas is coming fast and I've got two really memorable vintage gift ideas for you today. Hi, I'm Alana, welcome to my crafting channel at Upcycling NZ. The first project's this model biplane. It's the type that you buy in a kit set and put it together, and someone's done the hard work already. I picked this up for $2 at a school gala. There's the slightest bit of damage here at the bottom of the plane, so I'm going to cut that down and give it a bit of a sand just to make it look like it was always that way. I'm using a resource photo of a World War I biplane. It was a British SE5, and I'm going to try and paint this in the colours that it was painted in originally. So I'm mixing some colours. I've got a bit of my Fran Green chalk paint, and I'll add a bit of black to that. I needed it to be a little greener, so I've got some lime green acrylic paint and I'm adding a little bit of blue. So between the four colours, I'm going to keep mixing until I have the colour that I'm looking for. Now I'll give it its first coat of paint, making sure I get into all of those nooks and crannies. Once the first coat was dry, I'm going to go in with a second coat, and I'm painting every area that's going to remain this grey-green colour. Once the second coat was dry, I went in with a pencil and started marking the detail onto the plane. I used a variety of round things to create my circles, and I got them about the right size and used them as stencils to draw around. I used a ruler to create the straight lines, and all the time I was taking into consideration that I have to paint this, so if I had to adjust it slightly to make the painting easier, I did. Okay, now I can start painting. I'll start with the white, and I have an angled end brush, and it's just a little bit easier to get that accuracy around the circle with an angle. I don't want a modern red, so I'll add a bit of black to that paint and try and vintage it down a bit. I'm using a paper straw dipped in the paint to make the dot in the middle. A bit of blue aged down in the same way. Got to paint the tyres black. And here's a tip to paint that pesky narrow outline for a circle, is to take your round thing, in this case my paper cup, dip it in the paint and just create your ring that way. If I got it wrong, I just wiped it off with a wet wipe and had another go at it. Now I'm taking some folk art antiquing wax and I'll add a little bit of that on the end of a sponge, watered down a little, and I'll spread that all over the surface to really dull it down and give it the age that I was looking for. Now I'll remove the excess wax with a paper towel. Now I'll go back in with my angle brush and I'm going to reach all of those areas where I couldn't get with the sponge. I'll try to leave those areas a little bit darker because they create a natural shadow anyway. Now who would this appeal to, do you think? I'm thinking young boys, teenage boys. I could see this in a she shed or a man cave, or somebody might just like collecting historical memorabilia. I'd love to know what you think in the comments. For the next project, I picked up this little notebook from that same school gala. I think it cost me less than $1. I'm going to use my handy dandy little water sprayer, which is about a third full. And I'm using regular food colouring. I didn't have quite enough green, so I added a bit more and got a nice mild colour that I can flip through the pages every couple of pages or so and give it a little squirt. Or a spritz if you want to be fancy. I'll add a bit of blue to the sprayer and I'll go back through the book the other way and spritz every couple of pages that way. I wouldn't be too fussy, and then spread all the pages out and allow it to dry. I'll put this out in the sun. I've got some gold acrylic paint, it's metallic, and I'll just use a tiny bit on a sponge and run it along the very edges of the pages to age them up a little bit. Next I'm taking an old outdated map and I'll find a nice coloured part of the map for the cover of this book. I'll cut it out to size and I'm going to use a wide glue stick and I'm covering every single part of that diary cover. I'll press it down and I'll start to smooth all of those wrinkles and glue lumps out. I use this little plastic spatula. I'll trim off any excess paper and I'll open it up, and decided to split the middle and fold each side back and then trim it along that crease line. That glue really works well, it doesn't want to really release that side very easily. Now I can fold the sides in, and I'm cutting a weird sort of an angle to the corners. I'm leaving 1mm at the very corner. I'm not cutting a proper right angle either, it's going to be slightly more than that, and then they'll overlap nicely when I paste them down. And before I fold over that very last piece, I'll turn those millimetre corners in, and then my mat will cover all of the corner completely. I'm going to start work on the inside front cover, so I'm cutting a piece that will fit nicely alongside the spine of the book, and I'll glue that on in the same way. Then I'll take some more of that Folk Art antiquing wax. I'll use a tiny amount and I'll offload most of the colour, and I'm going to run that along all the edges of the book to make this look more like an old relic. I'll also antique the edges of this American flag series envelope. I got this picture out of a stamp collector's book, and I'll show you that a little further on. For the back and side cover, I want to create a pocket, and I want to add a pop of colour as well. So I'm taking a red envelope and I'll add some age to the back of that as well. To get at those angles, I'm just placing a little bit of scrap paper underneath. Then before I add that to my back cover, I'm going to add a stamp. This is a nice large one, and I'm able to fold it over. And I'll glue that on so that it serves as a tab to open the envelope. Now if you're travelling, you could put your little tickets or your travel stubs into this envelope, even your passport, but I want to reinforce it, so I'm adding a little bit of PVA glue around all of the edges so that this stays nice and intact in the back of the book. I want to stencil the words travel diary onto the front of the book. So I'm taking my stencil and I'm just going to draw around it in pencil first so that I have my spacing where I want it, and I can change that if I make a mistake. Then I'm taking some modelling paste. I want to have a textural lifted text on the front of the book, and I'm using a little plastic spatula to smooth the modelling paste over the letters. It takes a little bit of dry time, so I'll separate the letters and allow each of the letters to dry. So in between dry times, I'm going to take some more of these stamps, and this is the book that I picked up from a thrift store for 50 cents. Such a great score, because you'd pay quite a lot to buy these as ephemera, and I have got literally hundreds of stamps out of this, and they're all collector stamps. I'll go ahead and select some of these, and I'll be aging up the edges with antiquing wax. Every quarter of an hour or so the modelling paste is touch dry and I'm able to do the next letter in my text for the front. Then in between times I'm going to start to attach my stamps as decoration all over the front and back covers of my book. I want to create a bookmark to go with this, so I'm taking a bit of stiff cardboard and I'll use some map both sides of my piece of cardboard and glue it on in the same way. I'll let that dry for a few minutes and I'll finish the last of my letters with my modelling paste. Then I can take my paper guillotine and cut very nice square and straight edges on my bookmark. I'm going to make it the same height as the diary. I'll cut some little angles on the corners, and at the top I'll do a slightly larger angle. Then I'll punch a hole in the middle. I'll go ahead and decorate this up with more stamps and embellishments, and I'll age the edges of my bookmark. My modelling paste is dry now, so I'm taking some of my homemade chalk paint in the colour Fran Green, and I'm going to just overpaint each of the letters ever so slightly. Then I'm going to take a wet wipe and I'm going to wipe away the excess paint, and it will leave me a shadow around the letters and it'll highlight that texture in the letters themselves. Now that the diary is completed, I want to add a little bit of lace to the top of my bookmark. This will add another pop of colour with the red, gold and black that's in the lace. This is an offcut of an old bra, believe it or not. Trim the end on an angle, and just so that it doesn't fray, I'm taking a lighter to singe the very edge of that cut. The last thing I want to do is just add some more stamps to the envelope at the back of my diary and it'll be done. Now you can see that this would be a really versatile gift for a person of any age to record all those wonderful memories when they travel. Tell me what you think in the comments. So there's two of my memorable gifts, and they're great for people who are hard to buy for. Thanks so much for watching. I'd love to hear your feedback, good or bad, in the comments. And if you're enjoying my channel, please like, share and subscribe. I'd love that. I post a long version video every week, so I'll see you soon hopefully. Bye bye.